23 will be left pending. Chair lays out House Bill 2713, calls on Chairman Darby to explain the bill for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Chair, how are you, all of you? You've had a busy morning already. We're going to give you another good bill to consider. House Bill 2713 seeks to protect municipal civil service for firefighters and police officers by lowering the population threshold that prevents ballot initiatives from repealing civil service from 950,000 to 70,000 residents. If you recall, last session, 4227 said establish a population level of 950,000 for most of our larger cities who already adopted civil service, saying you can't simply, through a ballot initiative, remove that civil service protection. This bill ensures that medium to large municipalities maintain civil service protections, shielding law enforcement responders from political influence. Civil service ensures that firefighters and police officers are hired, promoted, and disciplined based on merit rather than political pressure or external influence. Civil service is important to me. During my formative years, I was on the Civil Service Commission in San Angelo for nearly 10 years. San Angelo remains, I think, the last community, maybe in America, that publicly elects their police chief. And as you might suspect, an elected police chief sometimes bends, if you will, to political pressures. And so we implemented civil service, and I was on the commission that watched over the rights of firefighters and police officers and protected them in their service to maintain due process, transparency, and fairness in our employment practices there in San Angelo. So what we're simply doing is saying we want to lower that. We want to recognize those benefits of civil service and give it to more communities throughout the state. Again, this House bill is necessary for those protections and ensuring that ballot initiatives do not undermine public safety in our municipalities. Certainly, this is a pro-first responder bill, and I urge your support. Stand ready to answer any questions you might have, and I reserve the right to close if possible.
Any questions? We will reserve. Vice Chair. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chairman, and thank you, Representative Darby, for laying out this bill.
I've been looking forward to our conversation this morning, Vice Chair.
Well, I think you may have brought a constituent of mine or two to testify, from my understanding.
Okay. I'm more than happy to listen to all the testimony.
The question I wanted to ask you is just about the history of this provision, and if you have any more information about these opt-in and opt-out elections. I noticed, the petition standard for the opt-in election is much lower than the opt-out election. I'm just curious what you know about the history and why we created a ballot prop.
I'm not familiar with that at all.
Okay.
I apologize. We can get back with you after the hearing today, but I just know the value of civil service, and I just want to be resistful and protective, if you will, of police and fire and the service they provide to our communities. I think this state has a vested interest in protecting public safety throughout the state, regardless of your city size. I think these protections are important, and they should be available to communities less than the 950,000 threshold.
Yeah. Well, and I guess to be clear, those protections are available right now. Folks can opt into civil service, correct? Yeah.
But what we're trying to do is say ballot initiatives that have, like you said, confusing thresholds which make that option available. We don't have those initiatives that are sometimes misunderstood and misinterpreted to do away with the protections afforded by civil service here in Texas.
If we're going to remove the provision for most cities, or maybe not most cities, but so many larger cities to leave civil service via ballot proposition, do you think we should also remove the option to opt into civil service via ballot proposition?
I would be happy to take a look at
Okay.
that with you. I was not a part of 4227, but I'm clearly, my motive in this bill is to protect citizens and ensure public safety for our police and fire and stability. Not to simply, when you have some percentage that becomes agitated or wants to do away with the police or funding the police, and they see this ballot initiative as a way to attack our first responders, then I want to try to limit that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If you would, let the record reflect that Representative Cortez has joined the dais. I'm sorry. Are there any other questions? We'll reserve your right to
Thank you, Chair.
close. And the chair calls Kathy Reyes with Cleat, testifying for the bill. If you would, please come forward, state your name, who you represent, and position on the bill for the record, please.
Good morning, Chairman, committee members. My name is Kathy Reyes. I am a senior supervising attorney for CLEAT. I represent as a supervising attorney, I represent Central Texas and East Texas. So my area is quite broad for the agency. We're here in support of 2713. As you all are aware, the initial underlying intention of Chapter 143 was to secure not only efficient fire and police departments, but free them of political influence. Unfortunately, in this day and age, a lot of our agencies throughout Texas have been at the risk of losing their rights afforded under 143, and we're here to advocate for House Bill 2713 to reduce the population bracket down to 70,000. That way we can protect more cities like San Marcos, who not too long ago was at risk of losing their civil service protections because we did have a ordinance that was an initiative that was really going to influence their civil service protections. Chapter 143 really provides a great police organization for our members. We have various safeguards regarding promotions, hiring, firing, and training. And so that way, Chapter 143 does help foster a level of professionalism that cities that don't have 143 aren't quite as trained up in their services. So we're here in support, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions? Vice Chair Joyner.
Thank you so much, Chairman, and thank you for being here today. I want to say, as the vice chair of this committee, I am quite frustrated that y'all are using my city as an example and have not come to speak to me about this once. That's disrespectful to me as vice chair of the committee and as the representative for the city of San Marcos. So with that said, I wanted to ask, do you have numbers, or well, actually my same question that I gave to Representative Darby, do you have any information about the history of the statute and why we had these ballot initiative opt-in and opt-out provisions?
I first want to apologize on behalf of CLEAT for your frustration. I will relay that back to our department that does handle political affairs, and I'll relay your frustrations back. I myself don't have that. I'm sure that they will have that, and so I can foster that communication between you and them.
Okay. And then I wanted to ask, do you have a sense of how many cities, in this size bracket are using civil service for fire and police?
Based on rough numbers that we were able to acquire, there would probably be about 10 cities that would fall under the 70,000.
Sorry, 10 cities under 70,000 that have civil
That
service?
would be incorporated into this change.
there's only 10 cities between the 70 and the almost 1 million?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm just saying that would be brought into it. So there are several, I've got several that are covered. I can count them all for you, but new ones that would be brought into the amendment.
Okay, I'm going to suspect it's more than 10 if civil service is fairly common. That's between 70 and, we're
Well,
moving
right
a
now, it's
rec-
between 950, right, is the threshold. So if that was changed, I'm saying there will be 10 additional ones brought in.
I understand, I'm just questioning that number,
Yeah.
but
I
we
don't
can,
have the
we
exact
can look at it in
number
more
of
detail.
all the cities.
Yeah, I guess
that
what I was
are
trying to
included.
understand is how universal is civil service in Texas? How many cities have actually opted in? Is it that most cities
mean-
have opted in, or have many
A
not?
good portion of larger cities have opted in.
Okay. And with smaller cities, do you have any sense?
I have a sense of some smaller cities, but based on population, not an actual number, just
Okay.
approximations.
Okay, yeah, I would love to follow up and see some of those numbers. And the reason I care is I feel like this being even considered in San Marcos, and my understanding of what happened in San Marcos last year is there was a petition to try and repeal civil service. They went off the statutory rules for how many signatures you need to opt into civil service, which I believe is 10% of the voters from the last election. But instead, they needed 10% of the registered voters, which is a significantly higher number, and misunderstood those different thresholds. And I want to be clear, I'm asking this with no strong opinion on what the city of San Marcos should have done, but with what it means for our communities to be involved. But if that's being framed as we're removing this essential protection for police, it begs the question of how many other cities have already opted in, and is San Marcos an outlier for having opted in as a smaller city into these protections, or is it pretty common for a city of 60, 70,000 people to have done this already? And I guess that's what I'm trying to understand, is are they an outlier by having opted in at all?
Right, and I understand your concerns, and like I said, I'm happy to get with the
Okay.
division that handles political affairs and have them meet with you and answer your questions.
Okay, yeah, and I guess the,
Along
another question I would have is, oh, I'm sorry, I just lost it. There's a lot going through my head right now. But you mentioned wanting to protect police departments from sort of political wins. And I wanted to ask because there've been a lot of conversations in my time of office around the San Marcos Police Department. And I have to say that's not a frequent conversation I wish on any of my colleagues. It's very challenging because there's a lot of really important interests that unfortunately don't always sync up together well. And I wanted to ask if you think the San Marcos Police Department was free from political influence when they refused to respond to protect a Biden bus in 2020 that was being chased by a Trump train, almost run off the road. Well, I mean,
don't
we
know how
have,
she can answer that question, Vice Chair.
I wasn't there.
okay,
I
that's fair.
can't.
but I guess why is this the political influence that matters? Is voters getting engaged when we see all sorts of other politicization of police departments? Why is this the type of political influence that we must shield our police departments from?
I think just speaking for myself and what I do for CLEAT, I think it's very important that when we have law enforcement officers who have dedicated their careers and lives to a city such as yourselves, and they've spent 20, 30 years, 15, 17 years with the department, and they've grown and accustomed to their rights afforded to them under Chapter 143. I think I'm speaking on their behalf. It's only right for them to continue their career and their service with an agency in which Chapter 143 was one of the reasons why they came to work for the department, or could have been, and keeps them working for the department and providing the service that your city needs.
Yeah. I guess what I'm struggling with is why this is a bill instead of repairing relationships within the community. That's the question I'm
understand your
struggling with.
frustration.
So, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you for your testimony. The chair now calls Peter Hunt, testifying self, Austin Justice Coalition against the bill. If you would, please come forward, state your name, who you're testifying on behalf of, and your position for the record.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Peter Hunt, representing myself and the Austin Justice Coalition, speaking against the bill. There's a couple points I want to bring up as far as concerns go for 2713. The first one is that, as has already been mentioned, there are already substantial barriers and requirements if a municipality wants to opt out of 143. They need to first get a large number of signatures in order to put a measure on a ballot, and then have the ballot actually get passed. So it's not as though there are not protections in place for municipal fire and police. Now, I very much respect the need and importance of those sort of municipal functions. I trained for 2 years myself as a firefighter and have worked with those sort of folks for a long time. The other issue I want to bring up is that if a municipality can opt in, they should be able to opt out. I feel like that's a pretty straightforward sense of fairness. Excuse me. As it stands right now, this amounts to sort of finger trap legislation where you can opt in, but once the 70,001st person in your municipality is born, you can no longer opt out, which is a little unfair and seems a little strange to me. So for those two reasons, I really want to raise that this legislation would not really do what it should to actually protect these municipalities and lead to some rather unintuitive and strained results as far as what people in a municipality can do to actually join or then opt out of 143. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Vice Chair Zwinger.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for being here today. You actually brought up a question I had about how the bill functions. Could a council still opt out of Chapter 143 if this passes, or is the only way in and out through ballot action?
That's unclear to me, but by my understanding, it would only be through ballot action.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for this witness? Thank you very much. Chair calls Tiffany Williams, testifying for San Marcos Police Officer Association for the bill. If you would, please come forward, state your name, who you're testifying on behalf of, and position on the bill for the record, please.
Okay, my name is Tiffany Williams. I am here as a member of the San Marcos Police Officers Association, and I am speaking in support of this bill. Now, I will ask for an accountability buddy, as I've had 5 shots of espresso, so if at any point in time I start speaking so rapidly you can't understand me, just a good one of these will help me know to speak a little slower. So I come in front of you speaking in support of this bill because of the specific dynamic that we've experienced in San Marcos. I've been a police officer for 17 and a half years, and while I've heard all of these arguments, and many of them have validity, what we've experienced in San Marcos is that civil service lies out a standard that holds officers for hiring, firing, recruiting, training. It provides for due process. And just because we don't like the due process or that it takes too much time to succeed in that is not a reason to do a ballot initiative that many times we find in having the conversation, which has been humored many times, that we find out there is no conversation. We want what we want, and we want it now. It's not robust. It's not a holistic conversation. It's not providing a balanced perspective. It's providing enough information to support a political agenda and reintroducing political influence into 143, which was meant to get police and fire out of that. And yet here we are debating it, and it almost feels cyclical in nature. But that's what we've experienced in San Marcos. And that's why I'm here in front of you all asking, please support this. If it's good for populations of 950,000, why is it not good to drop that population bracket and have that for other municipalities? And to speak specifically to San Marcos and also to Hays County, Kyle Police Department also has civil service, and right now Hayes County, which is where San Marcos is in the midst of, Hayes County is actually seeking out to get Chapter 143 civil service. So our debate on is it good, is it not good, in my perspective, when applied properly, absolutely it provides for standards otherwise not there. And here we are seeking a ballot initiative in San Marcos to repeal it, while another sister agency within our county seeks to get it implemented. Any questions?
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Vice Chair Zwingler.
Thank you, Chairman. I look forward to the day there is not a bill that is about my city in this committee. Not this hearing and not last one. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, ma'am.
I will say again, I really wish y'all had reached out and requested a meeting. I mean, I figured out this bill was moving through some firefighters from a completely different part of the state last week, shortly before it was set, and my door is open. But I want to be clear, y'all's organization has not used it. and I'm not going to ask you to tell me why or whatnot, but I want to be clear, it's open. My door is open. But I am concerned that the resolution here is a bill and not relationships within the community that I think fairly have been strained for some verified reasons. So I guess I want to ask, why is this not a community conversation? Are y'all worried that you would lose this vote if there was something on civil service in San Marcos now?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely, we are, because of our large student population and the transient nature of that student population, and watch it being exploited in activism. And I am wholeheartedly supportive of activism, but not a one-sided perspective that gets voters to turn out that are making decisions for long-term residents that are buzzword and inflammatory. And have we had this conversation? Have we tried with the different groups? Yes, we have. I've personally been involved in them. And that's where I came to understand that in having that conversation, not only was I dismissed, and when we wanted to compare education, that the person sitting across from me representing their organization had absolutely zero interest in anything that I had to say, and apparently believed that I went into law enforcement because I was bullied as a child or something of that nature. It was completely dismissive and disrespectful to my educational background in criminal justice and heavily in sociology. And that was completely dismissed. They had no interest in having any conversation with me or any of the other representatives there.
Well, I'm sorry that was your experience. I do want to encourage y'all to think about relationships with different parts of the community, though, still. And I say this as somebody who was part of a group that was begging for a response during the Trump train incident. You know, and those things I think have really colored a lot of the community conversation around policing in San Marcos. And I want to be clear, I think the San Marcos Police Agency or the police department is doing everything they can to do a good job. I respect Chief Stanridge. I think he is doing a good job. But there's some challenges, and I think you're correct that there's some particular challenges in a community with a lot of young folks who often end up more on the receiving end of policing than compared to some of the older residents. Younger folks get in trouble more often than older folks. I think that's fair.
With the downtown College Bar situation, I do believe it lends itself to that.
If we could, we're over in the
Yes, sir.
town side, not in the bill side.
Well,
so
but the bill
they do
is
tie together, but I follow.
the bill is getting around some community conversations, I
It
think.
is.
And if those entities were interested in actual conversation, not just seeking out their own political agenda, I welcome it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But that has not been the experience on many encounters.
Yeah, and I don't want to say any particular entity is who y'all should be working with.
Yes, ma'am.
Question specific, is it your understanding as well, and I can bring this back to the author too, that the only option for folks to get, or that the only way to get in and out of 143 is through the ballot initiative, or is there a council option as well?
No, my understanding is there was absolutely a council option, and our council specifically chose not to in a majority vote and chose to kick it to pushing it towards the ballot initiative aspect.
Okay. And y'all have been very involved in those city council elections, correct?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, sir.
The chair now calls Bo Simpson testifying on behalf of self, Texas State Association of Firefighters, for the bill. If you would, please state your name, who you're testifying on behalf of, and your position on the bill for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bo Simpson. I'm testifying on behalf of the Texas State Association of Firefighters and myself. We are in support of House Bill 2713. I would like to clarify a few things from the questions that I've heard a minute ago. One, a council cannot decide to get in or out of civil service. That has to go to ballot referendum that's put on by the voters. That is one of the big issues that we have. And while your city is obviously the hot topic, you are not the only city that is dealing with this. This is a statewide issue. What is happening is we have these outside groups that are basically trying to bust the morale of fire and police departments, and they're trying to go in. They don't like the fact that we have civil service rights that the voters voted on and approved, and that's how we operate under those rights. Civil service as a whole, for the cities that have civil service, most cities will tell you it is a good process. It's a set of standards. It dictates how things have to be done when it comes to disciplinary, pay, benefits, things like that. It's not this bad thing that people want to get rid of. So again, it does have to be voted on by the voter. Changing the bracket from 950,000 down to 70,000, all that does is simply add more cities that have already gone through the voting process, and the citizens have voted for that, so it protects more cities to keep their civil service rights. The issue that we have is, and for example, ma'am, in your city, for the last 2 election cycles, this has been a fight. So the problem is it costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of money for the Firefighters Association, for the Police Association. It costs extra money for your city to put on extra referendums to continually fight these battles. To answer one of the questions that you said earlier, for example, I represent a quadrant of the state that I have 57 locals, 57 cities that are under me. I currently have 12 locals that have civil service, and within the next 2 years, I've got 12 more that will be running for civil service. Generally speaking, overall, we are having success in a lot of our smaller cities that are running for civil service, and they are being awarded civil service. Obviously, when you get into more of your hotbed political areas where I am up in the Metroplex, sometimes that gets a little more testy. Those races cost a lot more money, and there's a lot more unfactual things said about that. So we are in support of this, and again, we support the lowering of the bracket because it simply is protecting those cities that have already done their due diligence, have already had the voters vote on it, and the voters have said yes. So that is the number one issue that we have and why we want to support this. The other issue is, and I will tell you, I'm a 24-year veteran firefighter. I've worked for 2 different departments, and I've worked for both civil service. Both of my cities have been civil service. Personally, I would not work for a non-civil service city because the protections are not there in non-civil service cities. That's just my personal, just letting y'all know how I fall on that one. The big issue as a former local president, dealing with some of these attacks in the past, it costs my local money, it costs my fire department money, my city money, and then on top of that, we've got other things that we need to be worried about than running referendums every year to attack a right that we have already been given by the community. So thank you for your time. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions for y'all.
Vice Chair's winner.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, so just to clarify, your understanding is a city could not opt out of civil service through a council vote?
Correct.
Does it concern you at all to have a way in and not a way out?
Well, when I take something to the voters and the voters say yes, in the following year, certain members of the council can just have the ability to vote us out when the voters said yes. Yes, I have a problem with that.
I understand the quick turnaround concern, full on. I'm just sort of, I'm concerned about cities being able to do something undoable, and if we think this should be so universal, sort of why it's not state statutory and instead of.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I'd be more than
structural
happy
concern.
to speak
Yeah.
with you later on this and do a little bit more research, but to my knowledge, this has not been individual cities that are wanting to get out of civil service. This has been individual groups outside of city groups that are attacking different rights under police and fire rights that are wanting cities to adopt this. Okay, so I'm not going to quote on that, but I will get information on that. But my understanding is it's not coming from specific cities wanting to get out of civil service.
Okay, yeah, no, I understand that.
Yeah.
I'm just sort of concerned about something with only a way in and
Yeah, absolutely.
not a way out. And I guess just to clarify, make sure I understand correctly, my understanding is San Marcos there was only an attempt to repeal civil service once.
I can
The
give more information on that.
referendum-
I'm not from San Marcos.
Okay.
Obviously, y'all are the big talk of the town right now, so.
Well, just for the record, and I want to
Yes.
make sure we're accurate.
Yes.
There was, there was a vote on, I'm sorry, there was a referendum on police contract, I think in 2023.
Yes,
But
ma'am.
that was under Chapter 142. The only 143 attempt, I believe, was in 2024 and
Yes,
didn't
ma'am.
get the votes. So,
Okay.
all right,
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Representative Garcia Hernandez.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you so much for
Yes,
being
ma'am.
here today to testify on this bill. My understanding as well, and I know that we had talked before about the fact that you yourself would not go to cities that did not have civil service. And I know that we, in particular in the Metroplex area, which I represent
Right.
that area, but other areas are having difficulty with finding the workforce, both police as well as for firefighters as well. Does some of this also play into that? You know, the importance, obviously, it's a consideration for you, but is that kind of the feeling amongst other fellow firefighters and police officers as well, that they would prefer to go to a city or a town that has civil service?
So I would say if you're talking to existing firefighters and police officers that know the difference between civil service and non-civil service, absolutely, I would say a majority of them want to have some sort of civil service, collective bargaining, meet and confer. They want to have some of those protections. If you were to ask just somebody off the street that's not familiar with either or, then obviously you would probably get a different response from that.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you for
You're welcome.
clarifying that. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And I don't know if I said already, but thank you for your service.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your testimony. So, is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 2713? If not, the chair recognizes Representative Darby to close on the measure. Chair Darby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Chair, my purpose is not about any single city. I think you know me better than that. This is about policy, and I'm all about policy. There are 36 cities that would be affected by lowering the threshold, 36, ranging from Corpus Christi, which is near the city of Fort Worth, actually 37, Fort Worth would fall into that, and all the way up to San Marcos. But in that is the city of San Angelo at 101,000. Civil service is a public good. Yes, it costs money, but I don't think there's a higher calling in service to our community by our first responders. And they need order, discipline, consistency, fair play. And to the question about political activism, if you will, this is not about the right or the left. This is about a public good. And so this bill is simply recognizing that cities under the current level deserve those same protections in continuity with what they've already decided is a priority for their community. Under 143 applies to any city with a population of more than 10,000. And they have, through their own public initiative, have instituted civil service. They've established that criteria, and what we're trying to send a message that's meaningful. We need to have that continuity, and we need to keep it out of the political realm. Again, you're a great member, and you represent your community, and you should be connected to any issue that affects your community, as every member of this committee should have priority over. And anyone within the sound of my voice needs to understand the process if there's a bill that affects each one of your districts, you need to be involved in that process. And you're to be castigated and shamed if you're not involving that member in that discussion. So absent any questions, I look forward to working, Madam Chair. I think you have a question.
Chair recognizes Vice Chair Zwiener.
Thank you, Chairman. And Representative Darby, I appreciate your comments. And I want to be very clear, I'm not saying it was you who made it about me, but my city was appearing on some folks' flyers. I wanted to ask you if you could clarify, because we've had a couple different perspectives on whether or not a city could vote to pull their city out of civil service or not. Do you have clarity on the law for us? with
I
that?
do not know.
Okay.
This is about ballot-driven initiatives,
Okay, thank you.
opting out.
Thank you. At this time, House Bill 2713. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, yes. Thank you for closing, Chairman Darby. House Bill 2713 be left pending at this time. Chair lays out House Bill 1816